How's everybody doing today? Chris with Wicked Repairs. We have another issue with the '07 Forde Edge. One of the bearings on the drive shaft is gone, and you cannot get just the bearing to replace it. You have to replace it as a whole drive shaft assembly. So I have a brand new drive shaft assembly here. The vehicle's got over 170,000 miles on it, so I think that's pretty darn good. Overall, this vehicle has treated us very well, and we love it. I mean, it's an animal in the snow. It's got plenty of room inside. It's comfortable, smooth ride, and it's been very reliable, so you can't ask for much more than that. So we do have to replace the drive shaft today. You're going to need a 13mm socket for the bolts on the ends of the drive shaft. You need a 15mm socket, and that is going to be for the nuts that hold on to the bearings. I'll show you how bad the bearing is, what's going on underneath, and before I do that, we'll show you the new drive shaft assembly. On the forward bearing, there's a little tab. We're going to make sure that that goes down, okay, so it mounts with the larger diameter section up, and on the rear, it mounts with the larger diameter section facing down. So if you have one of these in your hands, you'll know what I mean, where the mounts here, where they go across, is actually a shorter area here and a larger area here. So on the rear portion, the larger area faces down. On the front portion, the larger area faces up. This is the bearing on ours that has gone bad, and is the need of why we need to replace this. And just so you can see, all I have is the front end of the vehicle jacked up, and I'm just crawling on the ground because I don't really care about that. So, the rear end is down. I have some blocks blocking it just in case, you never know. But then I have my little ramps there that, if you saw my last video, replacing my mower blades, I use the same ramps. So we're going to get underneath the car, and I'll show you the bad bearing. So right here, this rear bearing, this is see the gap that's in there. See where it came apart from the bushing here. So this thing's bouncing around. It's causing all kinds of vibration. This one's gone too. You can see the gap in the front. Here we're gonna have, there's 2 bolts in the front. I don't know if this is supposed to be 4 or not, but there's only 2 on this, but I'm going to inspect it and make sure, because if it's supposed to be 4, I am going to have to put 2 bolts in here that could possibly be missing. It could just be the way it is. There is 1 bolt on this side, 1 bolt here. Those are 13mm. Then we have the nuts at 15mm here, and as I was saying, this is that tab that faces down. You can see the larger diameter is up, smaller diameter is down on the front bearing. And on the rear one, the larger diameter is down, the smaller diameter is up. And then 2 15mm nuts here and here. This one is up behind the exhaust, but you can push the exhaust over enough to get to that, or get to it with a small ratchet inside, but I'm going to try to get it with the impact wrench. And then we have 4 13mm nuts and the bolts in the rear, and we're going to take those out. I have already soaked everything in penetrating lubricant, so hopefully the nuts come off relatively easy. I think how I'm going to do it is take apart the rear bolts, take apart the front, remove those, and then I'm going to remove the centers. I'm going to leave those in for now for just support in here while I'm taking it apart. So I'm going to get down to it. I'm going to start there. I'm going to attempt try to get these off and hold the camera. Let's see. I got one out. We got 2 out. Alright, so I'm going to take out the other 2. I'm going to do them off camera. Just because I need both of my hands to hold the gun to get to where those nuts are. I'll get back to you. Alright, so I took all the nuts off. They came off no problem. Where the bearings are, where the housings are. Look at that. Crazy. Alright, and I was able to get all the bolts off here, no problem as well. The one on the very top side, I ended up using 13mm socket with a 3/8 to 1/2 inch adapter, and I use an extension that's one of the round wobble extensions with a 3/8 ratchet. And I had to do it by hand because it was too tight. I couldn't get the gun in there, but came out no problem, so I'm happy about that. So now we're going to pop the drive shaft off and get it out of the way. So this is the rear part. You can see this is where the shaft mounts to, those 4 holes, those 4 threaded holes, and there's 2 rounded holes here. And all I did was get a flathead in between this hole and give it a little pressure, pull back with the shaft as I popped this, and it popped right off because, I mean, it was stuck on there, you know, it was kind of seized together. So I just popped it off, nice and easy. You can do the same thing in the front and take it out completely. Alright, so we got the old shaft out. Got the old one, got the new one. Always match them up. They are a proper fit, I can tell. You can see really how bad that was. And this one is very bad as well. So we're going to put the new one in. The rear portion, as I mentioned, came right off with a flathead. This one, there wasn't really a good pry point. So I just kind of ticky-tacked it with the hammer a little bit and pulled, and it came right off. You can see the marks where the 2 bolts were here. There is threads that 2 bolts would go into here, but there was never bolts here. You can tell there's not even any markings. So I'm gonna put bolts in because I'd rather have 4 than 2. I don't understand if that's been like that since brand new from factory, because there's not even a single mark like there was ever a bolt there. So I'm gonna put 2 bolts in here and 2 new bolts in here. Make sure all those bolts get a little blue Loctite on them. You don't want them to fall off. You don't necessarily need red. You can see there was blue on them, but you do want to have blue Loctite on all the hardware because you don't want your drive shaft coming loose and falling apart, of course. So, all right, so we're gonna I'm gonna go back underneath the car and just check a couple things, and I wanted to show you one other thing too, because where the mounts are, you have the little bushings that are here. There's like a thin washer, okay, so that's going to go up against the mount, and then the bushing with another washer and the nut. So this is actually all going to face up in that orientation, okay, so just like that. And that part is going to go up against the mount for the bushings, okay, once you mount that in there. So yeah, I'm gonna start putting I'm gonna find a couple bolts for those missing front portion of the drive shaft, and we'll put this thing back together. All right, so we got the new drive shaft up and on the machine. Okay, we haven't mounted the vehicle, but I haven't tightened anything. You can see that real shiny bolt. I went out and I got 2 10 by 1.5 millimeter bolts by 30 millimeters long to match the threads on these ones, and I got washers. The bolt style, the head's a little different, but you know, the pitch is fine. That's what really is important, so that I can have 4 bolts in the front. So I just crisscrossed the ones that were on there and put new ones. So I put those in just hand tight for now, just enough to hold it. I put one here just enough to hold for the mounts. I still have to put that side in, and then I did the opposite side for the rear bearing. Again, those are just held on by a couple of threads just to support the shaft. And then I have all of the rear bolts in there, also just hand tight on a couple threads. So the whole thing's on here now. I Loctited the front and the rear bolts. I didn't do the nuts yet. I will Loctite these, and that's part of the reason why I had just put these on, you know, just to hold it also. But I had just put them on a couple threads on one side because I do want to Loctite those nuts. Don't want them coming loose. And as I said, the rears here and the fronts are already Loctite, so I'm just going to go and tighten these all down. What I'm going to do is put them all in with my impact gun. I mean, they're on there by hand. You don't want to put them in with the impact gun until you have them by hand, you know, twisted in where you know you're not cross-threading them and going to ruin anything. So, I'm going to start putting those in with the impact gun. I'm going to put it on, mine has a variable speed setting. I'm going to put it on the lowest setting just to drive them in and set them in. Then I'm going to go by hand and actually tighten them and not just hit them with the gun and leave it. So I'm going to hit it with the gun with the lowest torque just to drive them in everywhere. All the nuts on the shaft, all the bolts on the shaft ends. And then I'm going to go by hand and tighten them all, and we should be done. Well, that's it. We got everything tight. The two holes up front that did not have bolts in that were missing. It did have threads on the other side, but they were really rusty from never having bolts in there and having open threads, so I just had to run a tap through them. Nice and easy. Bolts went in no problem. Everything's Loctite. Everything's tight. As I said, I tightened everything down with the lowest setting on my impact, and then went by hand and torqued them all down, you know, tight so that they were tight and not going to come apart. I don't know the actual torque spec on them, but you know, with the blue Loctite and tighten them down by hand, you know, it's not going to go anywhere, so I'm not worried about it. And it's nice and good. Doesn't move at all anymore. If I tried to shake it, it actually shakes the car. So we'll go take it for a test ride. Should be golden. Hope you enjoyed this video. 2007 Forde Edge drive shaft replacement. I'll catch you on the next one. Well, I'm on the test ride now, and you can see it's got 172,409 miles. And drive shaft definitely fixed the problem. No more problems here. It's nice and smooth. No more chattering. We're good to go. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Thank you very much. See you on the next one.